Good morning. It's Monday here where I am today when I'm making this video, and I've spent the last 2 days making some sourdough loaves. And a couple people have asked me for sort of a longer form video of making my sourdough bread. So that's what this video is. I'm not going to do, tight edits and things and worry so much about time. I'm just going to try to capture sort of the major moments that I go through when I'm making my bread. So that's what this video is. I'm going to try to find some maybe nice soothing music for the background, but if that's what you're into today, then that's what this video is about. I just want to also clarify, I am not a professional baker. I think y'all know that. But I only point that out to say that I'm also not an experienced teacher about sourdough. I just really enjoy making these videos because it is a way for me to share what I've learned as a home baker. And I know that when, a few years back when I started learning how to do sourdough, videos like that or like this, what I'm hoping to make now, were really helpful for me and really useful. So I hope if you're watching this video, you are curious about baking sourdough, or you've started baking sourdough and you want to just see somebody else do it for some tips and tricks. That's what this video is about. So again, happy Monday. I'm going to finish my coffee and I'll start putting together the clips from yesterday when I was baking, and then I just finished them this morning. And also, the house smells divine. If nothing else, bake bread just so you can have the smells. Totally worth it.
Okay, here we go. Every loaf of sourdough starts with your starter. So this recipe has 100 grams of active starter. And then after I add that 100 grams of starter into my bowl, this is 275 grams of water, followed by 10 grams of salt. I don't use anything special when it comes to my water or my salt. This is the same salt that I salt my food with. It happens to be a pink Himalayan salt. That's just what I like in my kitchen. And the water is just what comes out of my dispenser in my refrigerator. You just want to incorporate those three ingredients together. I have some kind of neat, fancy sourdough whisk type utensils. I've used those before. And then sometimes I just grab the spoon that's out of the drawer. Now to this mixture, we're going to add 400 grams of flour. The flour that I like is the Kirkland brand organic all-purpose flour. It works great for bread. It's got a really good high protein percentage, and that makes for good bread. You can see here that I happen to empty my container of flour during this loaf, which is great, but I won't bore you with the pictures of me refilling that container. We're going to mix together those four ingredients. Just do what's called the shaggy dough stage. Don't have to worry too much about it. I always scrape down the sides of my bowl, and we're going to get it to this soft, shaggy looking ball. I'm going to cover it with my bowl cover. I like these bowl covers a lot. They have a nice elasticity to them, and the inside is a beeswax, so it is easy to clean. One thing I always like to do is feed my starter while my shaggy dough ball is resting. So that shaggy dough is going to rest for an hour before I stretch and fold. This is a great opportunity to feed your starter. I'm making 2 loaves today. You can see those 2 covered bowls there. So I have 2 jars of starter that I was working out of. I'm going to marry it together and just feed 1 jar. And that is going to be ready for tomorrow or the next day. I'm probably not going to bake actually for a few days. So I'm just making a small amount of starter. And then I'm going to empty the rest of those jars into my discard jar. This is a jar I just keep handy in the fridge, and I scrape all that good, useful discard into a jar. and save it for lots of yummy discard recipes in the future. At this point, my dough has rested for an hour and it's ready to start the stretch and fold phase. As you can see here, I just work my way around the bowl, lifting up the edge, giving it a stretch, and folding it back down into the center of my ball. As you do this, the gluten develops and your bread gets stronger and less sticky, less shaggy, and more of a smooth consistency. I'm going to do 4 sets of stretch and fold during this bread making process. So this is the first one. Then I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes and I'll do it 3 more times after that. I'll fast forward on this second loaf since you already saw me do the full time on that first loaf. Then I pop the covers back on. Like I said, set the timer for 30 minutes and then we'll do it again. Now in this video, I fast forwarded to the 4th stretch and fold. So after my 4th stretch and fold, we're going to be ready for the bulk fermentation phase. I like to transfer my dough to this food preparation container. It's really handy because it has markings on the side that help me gauge how much my dough has risen. Now I only have one of these food containers, so the other one I'm just going to keep in its bowl that I did the mixing in, but I will use that food container with the green lid there as my gauge for both of my loaves today. During your bulk fermentation phase, you want your dough to gain about 50% of its volume. So for me in this green container, I know that that means my dough is going to be about halfway between that 1 quart line and the 2 quart line. I know it's a little hard to see from this video, but that's why I like this container a lot. It gives me a good visual for how much I want that dough to rise during bulk fermentation. Quick side note of apology to say, oops, I did not keep my camera in the same position. I don't know what I was thinking, but for some reason, I turned it back to portrait orientation instead of landscape orientation. Oh boy, I guess I'll get better at these things as I keep practice making these videos. All right, as I've turned out the bread onto my work surface, I'm going to use a little bit of flour if I need to, just to keep it from sticking. You don't have to go crazy with that extra flour. Just a little on your surface and a little on your hands can help if your dough is a little too sticky. That's not unusual for me to sometimes have to add a little bit of flour, although sometimes I don't need to add any flour at this stage at all. I don't know why. It could be the humidity of the day, it could be the temperature of the kitchen, it could be, anything like that. Now, if you are finding that your dough really is just too sticky, then you can reduce the amount of water in your recipe. And you're just going to use this motion. I like using a scraper tool to help me just sort of pull and twist my loaf. What you want to get is some surface tension on that loaf. And it's going to start making kind of this smooth, nice, round shape. And when it feels nice and taut, then you know it's ready to rest. And it's going to rest like this for 40 minutes. Because I'm making 2 loaves this day, I'm going to start my other one at the same time, of course. And I'll fast forward a bit on this one since you've already seen me do it once on the first loaf. It's been 40 minutes now that both of these loaves have been sitting out. That's called your bench rest. And at this point, you're going to do your final shape. However, on one of my loaves, I've decided to do a cinnamon sugar incorporation. So what I'm doing here is stretching out the dough, and I kind of like to give it, it's almost, I feel like I'm making, I imagine I'm working with pizza dough or something, and I'm stretching it out into a flat-ish surface. I just kind of work with it, wiggle it, kind of striking a balance between giving it enough pressure to really stretch it out, but not being too rough so that I rip it. And then I'm going to sprinkle that cinnamon right on top, just right out of the container. This is Kirkland brand cinnamon, a very economical choice. It works great. And then I'm going to take light brown sugar and just sprinkle that over the top. And I kind of, as I go, I'm going to use my fingers to kind of press it into the dough, leaving a nice edge around the whole perimeter so it doesn't spill out the edges when I roll it up. I'm going to stretch each side toward the center, add a little bit more cinnamon and sugar. Press it in just a little bit to help it stay in place. And now I'm going to, I think I decided I want just a little more sugar. I always have to be careful though. My temptation is to put too much in and then it'll bust at the seams. All right, I'm going to start at the end here and just carefully roll it up, keeping it all inside. I use my hands to shape it back down into that circular mound shape. Use my scraper again to give it another shaping. Again, just pulling the sides down so we get a little bit of surface tension about the top and trying to keep all of my incorporations on the inside. Next, I prepared this banneton basket with a tea towel. I put just a little bit of flour there on the inside. And I'm going to carefully and swiftly put it right into the basket. I can use my fingers to kind of knit up any little tears. This actually worked out great, not too much tearing. Cover it with a tea towel and it's going to be ready to go into the refrigerator overnight. Now I'm going to do the final shaping with the other loaf. This one, because I'm not doing an inclusion, is a little simpler. Just do what's called an envelope fold, bringing the ends in on each side, rolling it up, and then again, doing another shaping till we get that nice, taut, firm surface that we like. I have another banneton basket ready to go. Again, just a little flour on the bottom. And carefully and swiftly plopping the other one in. These loaves are both ready to go into the refrigerator overnight. Now you can put them in the fridge for anywhere from 8 to 48 hours. Usually I put them in the night before and then I'll bake it in the morning. So here we are, next morning, and I'm ready to prepare them for the oven. First, I'm going to tear out a generous size piece of parchment paper, then just taking a regular old dinner plate, I'm going to turn my loaf upside down onto the plate. Remove the basket and my tea towel. And now I'm ready to score the bread before it goes in. I like to put a little bit of flour over the top. It just helps your little design from the scoring stand out a little bit more. You don't have to do this, it's really just aesthetics. Then for your scoring, you're going to take your lame. I'm going to do a real simple score this morning. 1 down the center, and I go back after. You want to do 1 cut and then do a little bit after to make it a little deeper. These side cuts are just for decoration. Again, an initial cut, and then I go back in and do it just a little bit deeper. That'll help it open up a little bit more as it bakes. While I was scoring my loaf, I was preheating my oven with the Dutch oven inside to 500 degrees. Now be careful, your Dutch oven's going to be super hot here, but you're going to carefully use the edges of your parchment paper. That's why I say use a generous size piece. And you're just going to lower that loaf down into your pan. Again, careful of those hot sides. I take a wooden spoon and just use that to kind of push down the parchment paper away from my bread. I'm going to put the lid back on my Dutch oven, put it back in the oven, and I'm going to reduce the heat to 450 degrees, and I'm going to bake it with the lid on for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I'm going to remove the lid. That's going to help it brown up a little bit more. Put it back in the oven, reduce the heat again to 400 degrees, and bake for an additional 10 minutes. After 40 minutes of total baking time, my loaf is done, looking really good. Now, I do recommend when you're new to this, do check the internal temperature. It should be at least 205 degrees, anywhere from 205 to 210. I'm going to gently and carefully lift that loaf out of the pan onto a baking rack, and I'm going to let it cool at least 2 hours before I cut into it. Looks really nice. Okay, this is the reveal of the cinnamon loaf. Now, I admit, I did not wait for y'all and turn the camera on when I first cut into it because I baked it this morning and it was just cool enough for me to cut into it and give the kids a piece of it before they ran off to school. So I didn't want to take the time to do the camera and all of that. So this is after the fact, but I do want to show you, it turned out really well. I love, look, it's got just a little bit of that swirl. The crumb is really good. I'm really happy with how this turned out. And I'll tell you, just a little bit warm. Now, y'all know this. I've said it before. Do not succumb to the temptation to cut into your bread when it's hot out of the oven. You'll wreck it. You'll squish it. So I waited just long enough to cut this, and probably I pushed it a smidge. But anyway, it was just cool enough to cut into. Let me tell you one thing that is sort of a happy accident. I am getting better at when I make dough or, bread with inclusions, of keeping the inclusions inside when I roll it up tight so that it doesn't get all leaky and messy. I've just practiced. Mostly my rolling has gotten a little better, my rolling and shaping. I've also kind of figured out how much inclusions to put in so it's yummy, but don't put too much in so it bursts at the seams. Well, anyway, I feel like this is the perfect, I kind of did this one just like I like it because it has, you can see, it did leak just a smidge there where I kind of busted the edge a little bit, but I like it just a little bit because it kind of oozes out some and then it gets kind of caramelized there on the bottom, just the right amount of like toasty, just kind of burnt, like caramelized. That brown sugar it tastes kind of like candied, just a little bit. If it's too much, then it gets all really burnt and causes all this smoke coming out of your oven, and I've done that before too. But this I like just a little bit. Anyway, all right, so there's the cinnamon loaf. I do have, this loaf is ready. Doesn't it look good? It really does look pretty, but this one's still very warm to the touch. So I'm not gonna cut into this one. I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna be a good girl, and I'm gonna wait 2 hours before I cut this in, but I cut into this one, but I will be back when it's time to do that. Okay, time to cut into this beauty. It turned out really pretty. I got some good height on it, just the right amount of browning that I like.
And let's slice her open. All right, I'm gonna pan down. Super fancy. All right, there we go. Okay. There we go. Oh, that last little part's always tough. I kind of do this little motion with it because I don't want to squish it. I feel like I gotta get one more. I'm on there. Okay, what do I have? Okay. All right, there we go. It looks really nice. I'm happy with that crumb. The bubbles are, you know, big but not too big. It feels really soft. Yeah, that looks really nice. All right, panning back up, super fancy. There we go. Okay, so there you have it. Here's the side by side. Here we go. My cinnamon loaf and my regular, just regular straight up sourdough loaf. Okay, there. Got my bread done for the week. I hope you have a great week. See you later.